The 17th of August, 1990, Philadelphia. A hotel room bathed in the dying light of a summer afternoon. Inside lies Pearl Bailey, the woman the world called the ambassador of love, the voice that charmed presidents and shattered Broadway box office records. But in this room, there is no applause. There is no band. There is only the terrifying, deafening sound of nothingness. She hadn't come here to die. She came for a knee surgery, a mundane, routine procedure to fix the legs that had danced for 6 decades. The doctors said it was perfect. She was smiling. Her husband, drummer Lou Belson, was sitting just feet away, reading a magazine, waiting for her to wake up from a nap. She never woke up. The heart that had survived the Great Depression, the brutality of the Jim Crow South, and the skull-crushing violence of abusive husbands, simply gave up. But Pearl Bailey didn't just die in that hotel room. In truth, she had been dying for years, piece by piece, heartbreak by heartbreak. To understand the silence of her death, we must first understand the noise of her life, a life that began not with a song, but with a rejection. The first scar was inflicted the moment she took her first breath. Born in 1,918 inches, the oily industrial port of Newport News, Virginia, Pearl was a mistake. Her father, a strict Pentecostal minister, and her mother wanted a boy. They had the name ready, Dick. When a girl arrived instead, they didn't hide their disappointment. They branded her with it. They called her Dickie. It wasn't a pet name. It was a daily reminder of her inadequacy, a half-joke, half-judgment that wired her brain with a singular, toxic belief: you are not what we wanted. At 4 years old, the family moved to Washington, D.C. The church became her stage, but it also became her first lesson in cynicism. Pearl watched her father preach. She watched the congregation scream, dance, and faint in religious ecstasy. But she noticed something else. When the emotion peaked, the wallets opened. She realized early that performance wasn't just about God. It was a transaction. It was survival. But the holiness was a veneer. Behind the rectory doors, the man of faith and his wife were at war. The arguments were violent and constant. Her mother eventually snapped, packing the children and fleeing to Philadelphia. But the escape was a trap. By age 15, Pearl was a dropout. She wasn't a singer yet. She was a servant. She scrubbed the toilets of wealthy white families. She entered their mansions through the back door, invisible, silent, cleaning the filth of people who wouldn't look her in the eye. She would stare at her raw, chemical-burned hands and whisper a vow. I wasn't born to bow. Her brother Willie, a tap dancer, dragged her out of the kitchen and onto the stage. She entered a contest at the Pearl Theater. She sang Poor Butterfly, a song about waiting for a love that never comes. The audience froze. They didn't hear a girl. They heard a ghost. She won. But here came the first twist of the knife. 2 weeks later, the theater owner vanished. He took the money, the payroll, the hope. He left Pearl standing on a curb, penniless. The lesson was brutal and immediate. The stage gives you light, but the business leaves you in the dark. She fell into the coal circuit, a purgatory of dive bars in mining towns. This wasn't glamour, this was war. She sang on rickety stages while drunk miners threw bottles at her head. The microphones were cheap. The air was thick with coal dust and hate. It was here she developed her style. She didn't just sing, she bantered. She learned to talk back to the hecklers, to use humor as a shield. But while she could deflect a bottle, she couldn't deflect the monsters she invited into her bed. Pearl Bailey was starving for the love her parents never gave her, and like many starving people, she ate poison. The first monster, 1,942. She married a drummer. It lasted 18 months. 18 months of jealousy, alcoholism, and fists. She walked away with bruises on her skin and a crack in her spirit. The second ghost, World War II. She joined the USO to sing for troops, hoping to outrun her pain. She married a soldier, but war destroys men in invisible ways. He returned from the front, a hollow shell. He left her a note. "I'm not the man you married. No blood this time, just the cold abandonment of a woman who was never enough." The third butcher, 1948. Then came John Randolph Pinkett. This was the cruelest twist. He wasn't a rough miner or a broken soldier. He was educated, refined, articulate. Pearl thought she had finally found safety. She was wrong. Pinkett was a jealous, controlling sadist. The violence escalated until one night in 1952. He didn't just hit her. He picked up a heavy pistol not to shoot, but to bludgeon. He struck Pearl across the head with the force of an executioner. The blow cracked her skull. Blood poured down her neck, soaking her collar. She didn't die, but something inside her did. The belief that love could save her was beaten out of her that night. She divorced him, wrapped her head in bandages, covered the scars with a wig, and went back to work. Because in Pearl's world, if you didn't sing, you didn't eat. Broken, battered, and cynical, Pearl met Lou Belson, a white drummer for Duke Ellington, 6 years her junior, gentle, quiet. For the first time, a man didn't want to own her. He wanted to keep time with her, but the world wouldn't allow it. When they married in London in 1952, the backlash was visceral. This was America before the Civil Rights Act. Lou's father wrote a hateful letter, disowning his son, terrified of a mixed-race grandchild. Promoters canceled shows. Hotels slammed doors in their faces. Audiences walked out the moment they saw a white man backing a black woman. This was her double life. On stage, she was the ambassador of love, smiling, cracking jokes, making white audiences feel comfortable. Off stage, she was denied entry through the front door of the very venues she sold out. Once, outside a Frank Sinatra concert, 2 men attacked her simply for being black. She didn't fight. She wiped the blood from her lip and kept walking. She learned to swallow the rage. She metabolized the hate and turned it into songs. But the body keeps the score. By the 1960 seconds, Pearl was a legend. She starred in Hello, Dolly with an all-black cast, saving a failing show and winning a Tony Award. She was dining with presidents, but her heart was rotting. Decades of stress, trauma, and the relentless grind of the road had destroyed her cardiovascular system. In 1965, she collapsed backstage. In 1974, in Denver, her heart actually stopped. For several seconds, she was dead. Doctors revived her, bringing her back from the void. They begged her to retire. They told her the stage was killing her. Her response was haunting. "If I stop singing, I stop breathing." She wasn't addicted to fame. She was terrified of the silence. In a final, desperate attempt to find meaning, she pivoted. At age 67, she enrolled in Georgetown University. The Broadway star became a freshman. She studied theology. She wrote essays on salvation. She was looking for God, or perhaps looking for an apology from him. She graduated. She worked for literacy. She tried to be a saint, but you cannot outrun a broken heart. Which brings us back to Philadelphia. August 1990, the knee surgery was a success. The danger was supposed to be over, but the heart that tired, scarred, overworked muscle finally whispered, "Enough." She died while looking out a window. No drama, no final aria, just a switch flipped to off. Lou Belson, the man who had drummed for her for 40 years, was left in a silence so loud it was deafening. He told the press, "I lost my best friend," and then he retreated. But the tragedy has a final, cruel aftertaste. The legacy Pearl fought to build the family she protected against a racist world did not survive her. Lou lived another 19 years in mourning, and then the bloodline flickered out. In 2004, their son Tony died. 5 months later, Their daughter Dee Dee followed him to the grave. The house is empty. The line is closed. Pearl Bailey spent her life breaking barriers, enduring abuse, and preaching love to a hateful world. She wore a mask of joy over a skull that had been fractured by a husband's gun. She sang of happiness while her heart slowly died. In the end, the ambassador of love didn't just leave a legacy of music. She left a lesson in endurance. She showed us that the brightest smiles are often painted over the deepest cracks. And sometimes, the only way to survive the darkness is to become the light yourself until the battery finally runs dry.